Picking up where we left off last time, you said that phase one was going to be within the funding envelope, that you were doing the necessary work on the remaining phases. But bearing in mind that this project started with a budget of 37.5 billion, quickly rose to 72, then 98, then probably the most accepted number at the moment is 106 billion. Bill Barclay's got numbers that, if you read through them, do make a lot of sense to me, considerably higher than that. The benefit cost ratio for phase one has only ever been 1.2, which in government speak equates to low. Having taken a leg out of HS2, what is the new BCR of the whole project? And through that lens, how can it still be justified as value to taxpayers who are the sole funders of this project, that it's worth carrying on with?
Well, that's a decision of government, and government made that decision. So let's just look at one of the points you made. So the funding thus far is for the three routes. So we have no funding for anything other than the three routes that we've. So there's a notional funding for 2B West, 2A and phase one. So there's about 70 odd billion pounds all in. So that's what, and the bit that we've sort of locked with Treasury is the 44.5 for phase one, and we have a range for phase 2A. If you take the business case in turn, if you the modelling that the department did, that we supported them on for phase 1, 2A and 2B West, gives you a BCR of 1.2. I think we need to look beyond the straight business cost ratios on this project and look much more strategically about what this project's going to do for the economy. If you think about the points that the chair just made about people's disappointment around in Leeds and the fact that the North needs much better connectivity, completing HS2 in the way that government have committed to in the IRP, looking at further ways through the other additional funding government are going to make available to find a way of getting high-speed trains into places like Leeds, will profoundly change the connectivity of the northern cities, put massive capacity into the existing system. To the earlier point, will do make a significant contribution to the reduction of the carbon footprint of the area because of the car use and seeing a migration from cars onto trains. So I think we need to look at those sort of wider strategic issues as why this project is so compelling. And if you looked at just the BCR for a lot of transport projects, the Jubilee Line extension's a case in point. Wasn't even, I think, one at the time, but actually profoundly changed that part of London. And if you could never imagine we'd have ever hosted the Olympics, or you wouldn't have seen the expansion of places like Stratford and beyond without extending the Jubilee Line out to Canary Wharf and Stratford. So I think for me, to the point the chair made, I'm absolutely convinced this is the right project for the country. We're seeing what it's doing now to drive investment in skills, investment in innovation, what it will do in the long term for connectivity between the major cities of this country, then that, I think, for me, is the sort of compelling case.
If I can come back on that, BCRs have been the mechanism by which government have been held to account on making decisions over taxpayer-funded projects for some considerable time. The overall BCR on HS2 previously, before the eastern leg was scrapped, was low. It was 1.2. So just so that we can have it for the record, what is the BCR now the eastern leg has been scrapped?
To my knowledge, that has not been modelled. So the business case for the eastern leg as a standalone piece, and it won't be modelled until we understand what the costs are. And we've only just had the decision from the IRP. So to the other question, until we understand what we think the eastern leg will cost to build, we can't feed that into the model that calculates the BCR. The BCR we have got is for the section between London, Birmingham and Manchester, and that, when the last time that was modelled, is 1.2, which under Treasury guidance, as you say, is undeniably is low. But my point is, government have made the strategic decision to invest in this railway, and government must believe, ministers must believe, that this project ultimately is value for money in the long run. The other point I'd make is many of these, the way the transport modelling in particular works, it's done over a 60-year life in terms of the return on that investment. We're building a railway here that's going to last over 100 years. So again, there's a sort of perspective on the numbers for me, which sometimes gets lost when we get sort of fixated on sort of benefit cost ratios, because there is a much broader, more strategic issue, and frankly, government have made that decision. And my job is to respond to that with the company to make sure, you know, we deliver the project, we make it value for money, because that's where I'm very much focused. And we will work with the department and help them understand the business case for the eastern leg and the other parts of the route in the fullness of time.
Okay, so let's look at it another way. The Infrastructure Projects Authority. 2019-20 annual report, the IPA gave the full HS2 project a red rating, which, again, translates that out of government speak into real language, means successful delivery of the project appears to be unachievable. The 2021 annual report, the project was broken up into its 3 phases, and phase 1 was still amber and red. It seems that whoever looks at it, whether it's the National Audit Office, whether it's the Infrastructure Projects Authority, whether it's independent scrutiny from very good peers, and it's me, a Conservative MP, saying a Labour peer is very good, Tony Barclay doing very in-depth scrutiny, it always seems to come out that this project is not delivering value to the taxpayer, potentially isn't achievable within the budgets that are set. And when the government's own mechanism, the BCR, for judging such projects is low, and now with the Eastern Leg scrapped, as you said in your previous answer, not even known, how can you continue until you know the real value as out of the subjective judgment of people in Leeds are disappointed, or I get that. Talking to Northern colleagues, they actually want that interconnectivity between towns and cities in the north, not necessarily north-south. How can we proceed when the established mechanisms of judging are just not known?
Well, a couple of things. One is we don't recognise any of the work that Tony Barclay's done. So, and all our work has been independently verified. We don't recognise any of that work. So that, for me, is, in light of the question, sort of slightly almost irrelevant. The second point I make is we've just actually been through on phase 1, another review by the IPA. They granted phase 1 as amber and said actually, bar a couple of issues, it was green. And the opening remarks in their report was, it is clear that the management team at HS2 is a very competent, very experienced team who have got a grip of the cost of the programme. So we have a grip of the cost of the programme, and my costs are fully transparent. We have a ministerial task force every month. We're subject to quarterly deep dives by Treasury and IPA. So I'll stand and defend what we're doing today on phase 1, because that's the bit I'm charged with doing. I'll come back to the BCR point. For me, the government's made the strategic decision. So your question is for me, a question for ministers and government. And there's no point me sort of trying to sort of continue to play that answer back. But of course, we are subject to, rightly so, peer review and challenge from the likes of the National Audit Office, amongst others. We've had our accounts audited. I mean, our accounts, just to put sort of context around this, the turnover of HS2 in sort of, I've been in this job nearly 5 years. In the last 3 years, the turnover of HS2 as an enterprise has gone from about 1.8 to 5.4 billion pounds. We've now let 23 billion pounds worth of contracts into the supply chain. So there is an economic value to HS2. And we're now talking to the NO about auditing our accounts for this year. So the scrutiny and the rigour and the controls environment that we've established in HS2, government can and should have confidence in. Whether it's the right project for the country is an issue for ministers and government, and as far as I'm aware, they've made that decision.